It's April and spring is really happening. Things are bursting into growth. Things are bursting into flower, and that means it's the perfect time for a garden tour. So come on, let's have a look around my garden in April. Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to my garden at the height of April. There is so much to show you and I can't wait to get stuck in. And I'm willing to bet that if you have a garden that right about now, things are looking pretty good as well. Now, normally when I do a garden tour, I take you around the front garden, then the back garden, then the veg garden, and it helps you understand the layout, but it's all quite linear. And if you want to see that, you can look at previous garden tour videos. Instead, what I want to show you is the absolute highlights of what is happening here right now. I've got things that are just looking beautiful and things that I've been working on that I can't wait to show you, development that's happening. So let's kick off straight away. And I want to start with this, one of the really beautiful mature trees that we have in the front garden. This tree is just fantastic. And truthfully, it's a tree that I never really would have thought of or considered until it was in the garden that we bought. This is a crabapple and it's called Golden Hornet. But what's lovely is that it's actually got two really nice periods of interest. One is really quick and fleeting, which is now when it's in blossom. And then in the autumn, the fruiting season goes on for ages. So right now you can see just how beautiful it is. This little patch is the first patch to come into flower, but within about a week or so, this entire tree, all 20-something foot of it, is going to be covered with these blossoms. But what's lovely is the buds are really dark magenta pink, but then they open into a pale pink flower that then, as it matures a little bit over a couple of days, ends up almost white. And just to see it completely covered in flower is something else. But it's not only this tree that's great. I have to show you the wedding cake tree. And here it is, the wedding cake tree. Isn't she a beauty? I love this tree. When I sit at my computer, I look out over the front garden, and particularly in the winter, I'll look out over this with all of its bare stems and wait until it starts to burst into leaf. And it did that about 10 days, 2 weeks ago. So everything at the moment is really light coloured, fresh and new and vibrant. And the colour, when you have these variegated leaves that are quite a limey green with a white, gives it this really unusual bright tone that I think just looks fantastic. Right, I'm not going to keep going on about this. I do love it, but there is more to see. So let's keep on going. It wouldn't be a garden tour video at this time of year without me mentioning this. This is a Bbus. It's Bbus Darwiney, and it has got this absolutely shocking orange colour. And the funny thing is that quite often I'll have it in the background of the videos because of where it sits. It sits just behind the Guild garden. And as soon as this comes into flower, without fail, I will get comments and questions on videos, on Instagram posts, asking me, what is that plant? Well, this is it. And like I said, the colour is just staggering. I got to be honest, this was a plant that I was never very much fond of. I think that for most of the year, the green looks really dull. The little sharp spiky leaves aren't particularly attractive. I don't think it makes a massively attractive large shrub, but I have learned to put up with it because at the moment it is amazing. And this thing has been flowering for weeks and I think I'm going to get another couple of weeks out of it. More importantly than my enjoyment though, is that if you listen, I don't know how well you can hear that, this thing is covered with bees. And given that it's still spring and that actually there's not that much else in flower, this is a great thing to have. As you come out of the orchard, you come into the Guild garden. What was the veg garden and what I'm now creating into the Guild garden. And really, this is my pride and joy. I love all of the garden that I own, but this is the area where I have really changed it the most and where I'm really turning it into what I want it to be. And I don't know if you can see the difference, but at the moment it feels like week by week, everything is just exploding. Here in the centre, I have a whole load of gorgeous different pots of bulbs. These are Black Hero, a really nice dark purple that's a peony type. There's some nice white ones as well that are dotted all the way through. And then in the guild beds themselves, everything is looking really lush. Whether it's the chives that are coming through and starting to bud up for flower, they're going to be in flower by, well, late May, June time. The rhubarb, the lupins, the fennel, and of course the fruit trees. These were the 4 original beds that I put in last year for my fruit tree guilds, and this year the fruit trees are looking brilliant. They are dripping in blossom. So I'm hoping I'm going to get a couple of apples. I'm going to make sure that I don't let them bear too many because I still want them to develop, but they're looking really good. But I'm going to change the camera angle around so you can see quite how well everything is getting on in one go. I think looking from this angle, you can see quite how much I've got going on. All of the beds now have at least a few things planted that are really growing away. I've got shallots, I've got broad beans, I've got onions and garlic. I, of course, have all of my fruit trees in place. These are the 2 pairs. And then as you work back all the way through the garden, rather than having rows of things and individual crops or individual beds with just 1 or 2 crops, I've really decided to make this like a proper polyculture where different things are all interwoven through everything else. So you'll find some broad beans here, some broad beans further back, some onions, some garlic, some more onions. But what I'm really trying to make is this kind of wild look, but also something that's really ornamental, filled with loads of flowers, loads of interest, and actually just trying to make it into a space that's really nice to be in, as well as being productive, a space that, as well as that, is really good for nature, wildlife, and biodiversity. I love how this space is coming on. Granted, there's always work to do. There's a lot of weeds that need to be dealt with. There's more spaces that need plants put in. But every time that I come down here, it makes me happy and I can see it building. Roll on the summer. At this time of the year, the greenhouse is the nerve centre of the garden. This is where I do all of my propagation and where I bring on new plants for this year. Hence why, rather than it being my usual nice tidy space where I can sit and relax, it is a bit of a working environment at the moment, hence the mess. And I could easily do an entire video about everything that I'm sowing and growing in here and why and how. But just to give you a really quick overview of what's here and how it's getting on. So for starters, I have a whole raft of pots of little annuals that I'm growing. Things like snapdragons or antirrhinums, helichrysums, which are the old-fashioned straw flowers. I'm growing lovely burgundy ones and salmon pink ones, and also cornflowers. Now, you can direct sow these, and I know that most people do, but I actually quite like growing them in pots like this, where I can bring them on and dot them through. Once the last frosts are gone, a lot of these are going to be going out into the guild garden. I have some more salads that are going to go into the veggie pod down at the back. Once I've eaten the other ones, it's about keeping a succession going. I've got cosmos, and then behind me I have a whole load of other edibles that I am so proud of, and that really this year I'm keeping my fingers crossed for. And that's because I'm not great when it comes to growing brassicas, but I seem to be getting somewhere this year. So what I have is I have a summer flowering sprouting broccoli, like a typical early purple sprouting broccoli, but it grows quickly and it'll give you a summer harvest. As well as that, I have kaleet plants that are doing really well. I've got kale, which is Cavolo Nero, and in fact, now that the seed leaves are past, we're starting to get those lovely, dark, kind of ruffled, crinkly leaves. I've got Brussels sprouts, I've got spring cabbages, or well, summer cabbages, and as well as that, I've got broccoli, like calabrese. It's all happening. And what I do know is that all of this, it's all going to be ready and neat planted out in no time. so I may as well get myself ready for that. Back in my February video, I showed you really the overall layout of the back garden, and in particular these big old apple trees that at the moment they're just starting to come into flower and into leaf, and it means it's still open and airy. Well, in March was a bit disappointing when it came to flowers because the daffodils just really didn't perform. But these are making up for it. These are the bluebells that have been here, well, certainly as long as I've owned the garden. And aren't they beautiful? This gorgeous lavender blue, or I suppose bluebell blue, and white. And they're dotted all the way underneath all of the apple trees. They just really sing out. But wait till you see what's behind me. A few years back, I dug up a whole section of the grass here and planted it up with spring bulbs. And don't look too closely because I have pretty much neglected it for a while. So it is full of thistles and herb robert and couchgrass and buttercups. But in amongst all of that, right, there are still some really lovely things to see and enjoy. I planted it up with dark tulips. These are Queen of Night that have that lovely, simple goblet-shaped flower. They're dotted through. And then what I noticed the first spring that I was in the garden were all of these little blue flowers, which are just forget-me-nots. And they certainly self-seed really freely. Well, for something like this, I'm happy to have as many as possible. So I've intentionally been spreading the seed across this bed. And now what I have is this lovely mix of dark purple and really bright blue. I love it. And it's just so cheery in this corner of the garden. But let's keep on moving. At the moment, the pond is looking pretty wild, but in a really nice way. I'm happy with it like this because over the years I've been planting nice kind of naturalistic creeping plants that will give it that wild look, but more under my control. So there's things like ferns, there's some saxifrages, there's a little woodruff, which was little and is now really spreading. But you can't exactly ignore these. These are the marsh marigolds, which have actually been multiplying, and now they cover quite a bit of the edge of the pond. And aren't they brilliant? Big broad leaves, but more importantly than that, this shocking yellow colour. Not my favourite colour, but I'll put up with it here because I think it really works. These are just some of the wonderful things that are happening in the garden at the moment that I wanted to share with you. But there is so much more happening. So why don't you check out this video next if you want to see how I'm developing my veg garden into my guild garden, or this video with great suggestions of things to grow right now. And until next time, see you later.